Were you in? Were you part of an important event during the '80s?
During the early 80s, I remember we had a walkout for Proposition in 2.5. So our whole school, in protest of the cuts that we had, we all walked out of the high school. And we marched from the high school to City Hall. And we got in trouble. We're told to march right back. So we marched right back until a few of us didn't march right back and cause some problems. But, I mean, it's always going to be one group that ruins it for everybody else. But we made a statement. And we felt good about it. The teachers didn't fight us on it. You know, it's nice to feel good about something that you believe in. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it accomplished?
Not really.
No.
No, but it wasn't just our school. It was other schools. I mean, there were schools all across the state that were fighting these things, and it just wasn't fair to students to have to bear the burden of everybody else's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
was there like a certain school that like did something really good during that time, or just like everybody had to deal with it?
everybody had to deal with it.
Oh, seems pretty bad. So the environment in the ozone layer depleting was a
We never believed in it back then.
no.
We knew we heard, oh yeah, you know, as students and young people growing up, there's more of an awareness than there are parents. So our parents didn't believe in any of that. We didn't believe in any of that. In fact, it was 30. Now you're talking 30 years ago. They were talking about it was. It's just ironic that they said in 20 or 30 years, our climate is going to warm up. The global effect is going to be horrific, and nobody believed it because, you know, really, seriously, the world is going to warm up. Are you crazy? It's been like this forever. And here we are 30 years later, and it's actually true. So some of those scientists were dead on back then. And it wasn't Al Gore. It was actual scientists that were trying to warn people that things are happening. And now we see it.
So you weren't part of like any activist groups or anything during
No,
that?
there was no reason to be part of it. My group of friends were just a very basic, you know, work hard, you know, have some fun, go to movies, go out for drinks if we wanted to. We weren't part of an activist group, but there were a lot of activist groups now, like every decade.
Tell us about some activist groups and like what their plans were and stuff. About like anything, not just the environment.
Well, a lot of people didn't like Ronald Reagan, so there was a lot of groups that were against his trickle-down theory, where he felt the nation would be better off if the government was smaller and privatization took place. In other words, big businesses would help run smaller businesses and different parts of the government. He was a firm believer that, you know, that's how the country takes care of itself. And a lot of people don't believe in that because a lot of people don't understand that. So that's why we have a big change, a big shift. If you notice now, it's more socialistic, where mostly democratic, but people who don't understand big business and how it works, yes, they're greedy, yes, they definitely fill their pockets, but they also know how to make things run. And when you're a socialistic situation, everybody has to contribute to a group of people that need it and a group of people that don't, but know how to take advantage. And that's bad. So.
I had a good question. Oh yeah. How do you think that the 80s directly affected the decade that we're living in now?
How did it directly affect the decade that we're living in now? Well, first of all, like we had said, technology. Everything in the 80s was about the newest, hottest technology. Now, that cell phone that you see today, we had cell phones back then, but they actually you plug them in to the lighter, and you pull it out of a box, and it was on a coil, and that was a car phone called a cell phone, and it was about as big as a home phone. It was huge. I mean, that's a perfect example of some of the things that were just so out of the ordinary. It was like Star Wars back then. You got Pac-Man out of it. You got all the
Or Windows.
No, the power windows actually were back in the 50s and 60s, believe it or not. The Lincoln Zephyr, I remember, used to have a push button. I don't remember it, but I used to love learning about cars. But the car industry was the worst in the 80s, ironically. It wasn't the best. In fact, that's the reason why Japanese, Chinese, and all these other nations started to really pick up, because we were so cocky about our car industry that in the 80s it was all about making as cheap a car as you possibly can for the biggest profit. So we ended up coming up with horrible cars in the 80s. Horrible, horrible cars. There was nothing that came up good. Maybe a couple of nice looking cars, but I mean, we had cars called like the K car from Plymouth. And we just they were all boxes.
What's your favorite car?
In the 80s?
Yeah.
The Camaro was one of the nicer looking ones. Some of the Cadillacs were nice looking. There was no favorite car in the 80s, believe me, I'm telling you. They weren't great.
Do you find it easy to find a job because the economy was just so great?
Unemployment back then, unemployment today is, and it's kind of decent now,